Welcome to this week's episode of Lambgoat's Vanflip podcast. Today, I am joined, joined by Gabe and Travis of Enterprise Earth. That took them out. That was a mouthful to get out there, guys. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I'm a little disappointed, Gabe. I was really hoping you would call me from your reclusive van in the desert, studio van in the desert.
Sorry to let you down. Yeah, we're calling you from our German hotel room here in Europe.
Yeah. Did you guys just showed up there, right? Like you're about to do your European tour, right?
Yeah, we just got to the hotel like 5 hours ago, something like that, 4 hours ago.
Awesome.
So we're jet lagged. I puked on the plane, so I'm just nauseous.
Yeah.
The airline lost our bassist bass, and we're trying to find that right now. So it's fucking welcome to tour.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy day today to sit down with me, even though you've run into a couple snags. So that's a bummer.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we're happy to be here.
What happens when the bass isn't recovered? You just find like a different bass? You have to like borrow a bass or just...
So like our plan B right now, if the airline doesn't find it by tonight, we have to probably go to the closest music store that has the bass that we need and go buy a fucking bass. That's where we're at. Where our plan, if we do not hear from the airline in the next 4 hours, we have to take a train to Cologne tomorrow and buy a bass.
Never ends. Like you said, life on tour, right?
Yes, that's tour is slang for when shit goes wrong.
Yeah, we always say like the tour officially starts when something bad happens, and we started before the first show, so we're doing good.
So it's going to be a great time out there. How long? You guys are out there for quite a bit, right? Like a couple weeks.
We have 31 shows in a row out here starting Friday. So yeah, it's gonna be a long one.
Like no days off.
Consecutive run of shows that I've ever done in my like 9 years of touring now.
Yeah.
No days off. No, not a one. No.
Who booked that? Whose idea was that?
I mean, I guess suffocation.
Suffocation being death metal legends and being like, yeah, fuck it, we don't need days off.
I don't get it. They're like fucking 50 and they don't want any days off. They're crazy. But
that is kind of nuts, man. I'm gonna be real with you. But I guess Europe is so kind of not close together, but everything is relatively easy to get to. It's not like you're taking like 16-hour drives from Texas to California or somewhere like that. I mean, I don't know. You have the itinerary, so.
Yeah, everything's relatively close, and then the reason why you see a lot of tours of this size like have very little to no days off is just the financial logistics. We're paying for a bus every day, so every day you're not playing a show, you're spending money on a bus, and a lot of people do it that way just to make money. But personally, I would sacrifice that money for at least 2 days off.
One or two.
Yeah,
two, even one would be huge. So
yeah, a month long go at it just seems like daunting.
Yeah,
very daunting.
Yeah, 45 minutes of like nonstop playing for 31 days is like I feel like it doesn't seem like that much to most people, but like it's a lot, man.
Yeah, well, there's so much more that goes into it too. I mean, there's the travel between venues, which is time consuming, and you can't sleep everywhere and anywhere, and there's other things to get ready for the show. You have to get this ready. You have to go find the bass. You got to get this. You got to do that. So there's a lot of things that take part in that off time of those 45 minutes.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a lot, but we're stoked to be here regardless. So,
how was the flight? How long was the flight over there?
I live in like rural Colorado, so we had to drive 4 hours to get to Denver Airport to fly. So drove 4 hours, and then we had two flights, one to Munich, and then a short flight to here to Dusseldorf. So it was about 24 hours of straight traveling.
How daunting is that, just in general?
It sucks.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you just like you just try to mentally prepare for it as best you can, but like there's only so much that you can do about it. Yeah. You just like kind of accept the misery once the misery starts, and then wait until you are able to walk off the last plane.
Yeah.
And that's always the worst part, is the travel. Like once the travel's over, it's like, cool, we're here for a month. Once you get in the flow, it's just like any other tour. Yeah. And then it's the coming home as well is also pain.
Oh yeah.
But you're looking forward to being home, but you're not looking forward to the all day worth of travel.
Right.
Yeah.
I just flew back from New York this past weekend. We went to New York to see the Poison Well shows there, and I am not a fan of flying, but luckily it wasn't that bad of a flight there and back. You know what I mean?
Not too bad.
I did catch a little bug. I don't know. I got sick from being up there. It was like 17 degrees. And then you're in a room with a bunch of dudes that are just, slamming each other. It's the whole thing, man. So I got a little cough, a little sniffles cough after I got back, but I'm kicking it now, so that's good.
Yeah, I feel like I get sick like once a tour, and it's only ever for like a few days, but it's always after like the first week of shows of just everybody sweat and spit and like just germs flying around fucking everywhere.
Yep.
And then my body's like, oh, we haven't been used to this for the last 3 months. Let's freak out for 4 days. And then, but hopefully it's not the case this time, because usually, obviously U.S. tours will have like at least 1 day of rest somewhere within the first like 14 days. But this one, there will be no rest for sick days. So we got to iron immune system, will it into existence.
Yeah, I was going to say, good luck on trying to, just get through the whole 31 days of just, stretching yourself to the limits and being healthy. So that's going to be a task.
Yes.
And it's extra tricky on these Euro tours of this size because all 4 bands share the same bus. So there's literally 23 people on one bus. So if someone gets ill, there's a high odds that it can spread and circulate and all that stuff. But it's just the nature of the beast. So
is that something that's normal when you guys head over, when you guys do Europe, to bus it up, or is that just because you're on, with a bigger band, Suffocation and such? But how often do you guys bus it in Europe?
So every Euro tour that Enterprise has done has been a tour exactly like this, where all 4 bands share the same nightliner. As far as the travel logistics, it all depends on the size of the tour. Like a huge band touring over here, they'll probably have their own bus, and then the support may have their own rig. But it does make it, of course, logistically easier and financially easier as well when everyone's sharing the same expense.
Right.
So that's the main reason why you see bands of tours of this size all share the same rig, because it would be financially damn near impossible if you're having to do it on your own.
It is also super clutch knowing that everybody is going to be on time, because we are all arriving at the same time. And
that's good.
We're supposed to all be leaving at the same time. Someone might get left at some point, but we're all arriving at the same time. So everybody's there to load all of our shit in. It's just one trailer. We get all the stuff out. We share a lot of the same like backline and stuff. So it is like a unique experience versus the U.S. tours, where it's like every man for himself sort of attitude. But here it's nice because it's like, right, we get here, it's load in time, everybody just gets all the shit in, especially when we have like 5 flights of stairs to go up.
Oh boy, yeah.
So it's unique but fun. I appreciate it as much as I appreciate U.S. tours as well.
That's cool. Is it ever like a pain? It's got to be a pain in the ass though to spend a month with like 20 of the same dudes and getting on each other's nerves and pulling each other's hair out. I mean, it's got to be crazy.
I guess it all depends who you're touring with. Like, I
don't want you to throw anybody under the bus, but obviously,
Right.
No, but the last tour we did over here, the Shadow of Intent tour, it was great because literally everyone was just homies and got along, and
it was so much fun.
It just makes it great because everyone's hanging out, having a good time. Everyone's got each other's backs, and it's usually fun. I mean, usually there's like one black sheep on every tour. On again, no names need to be named, but there's always one, it seems.
Or someone who's more antisocial and just doesn't even really want to hang out with everybody else. Like it's a lot of clashing personalities, but I feel like people who have been touring long enough know how to work with all types of different people just from touring. And then so when you do a bus share like this, it's like, if you're good at being patient and you're good at understanding other people and not letting petty shit get in your way, then it's so easy to enjoy yourself, because you're drunk and having a bad time. I'm going to let you do that, and I'm going to go hang out with these guys over on the other side of the bus, and we're just going to chill. If you want to be miserable in your corner. And it's usually pretty good.
That's cool. And you guys will be over there when the new album, Death and Anthology, drops on February 2nd, which I guess let me check the schedule. This will come out next week, which is, a week before your album comes out. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes out next Friday.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is this your, this is your first Monarch Heavy release, right? This is your first release with them, or?
This is actually our third.
Oh wow!
It's my first release with the band. Yeah,
yeah. It's Travis, because you came last year, or actually a year and a half now. It's 2022, I think you entered, right?
Yep.
So yeah, your first album as a cohesive unit, but I don't know. I thought that was your first Monarch one, but oh well. Because I knew you were on like Stay Sick and some other things in the past, so yeah.
Yeah, it was like We Are Triumphant and Stay Sick before.
Yeah, like
right?
the first EP was We Are Triumphant, then it was Stay Sick for Patient Zero and Embodiment, and then the first Monarch record was Luciferous in 2019.
Ah, okay. And then the surprise release, and then this one. Gotcha.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how was writing? I mean, Gabe, do you kind of like facilitate the writing for most of the record? Because I know you do a lot of things for the band, whether it's you were rhythm guitar and then you took over lead guitar a couple years ago, and you do backing vocals and some other things too. So do you take on the brunt of the writing, or is it kind of like a shared experience with all the members and such?
So on Death and Anthology was actually the first time when we as a band wrote together.
Nice.
Previous to Death and Anthology, I would always write all of the instrumentation, and then Travis would do the vocals, or Dan would do all the vocals, Brandon would do drum things. But it was, it used to be, instrumentation, vocals, like, were written separately by one person. And this time we all got together for like 9 days. We rented this cabin near Lake Tahoe, California, and I would say about 80% of the record was written in those 9 days. Like I may have came in with like 5 or 6 half to almost finished songs. And then Travis had a bunch of ideas too, old ideas. Coda had ideas, Brandon had ideas. And then we just kind of just put it all together in those 9 days and penned the vast majority of the record, which it's the first time this band had done something like that. And it was very refreshing, and it was very fun. And everything definitely came out so much more unique and different than it would have if I was doing it all myself, or if any of us had been individually writing on our own.
Is that something that you guys decided? How did that come about? Like, how did you decide to throw a wrench in the mix and, have everyone collaborate this time around?
Well, this time, so with Travis and Dakota in the band, they're also guitarists and songwriters themselves. I previous to them joining the band, no one else in the band was a songwriter, really. So knowing that they're both great songwriters as well, like, it just makes sense. Like, we were just like, hey, like, let's put our minds and forces together, and the sum of the parts is greater than the individual, whatever the fuck that
saying is.
You know what I'm saying? But so it was like, yeah, let's work together, to make something better than just what we could do ourselves.
Oh, I thought Travis was going to say something. Oh, he is. Okay, go ahead.
It was cool too, because like, we the four of us, like, me, Gabe, Brandon, and Coda all share a lot of the same influences musically, but there are a lot of vast differences between our tastes as well. So it was cool being able to merge like the side of metal that I listen to more than anybody else in the band does with like the core of like what the band already kind of sounds like under like the metal umbrella. And then same with Coda, like him and Brandon both have like unique taste in music as well. So like pulling all like the various like kind of hidden influences from all of our listening backgrounds and even just musical backgrounds of bands that we played in and shit, I feel like really did make something like so much more unique than what I think a lot of other bands are able to put out as well, just because most bands, it's one person who writes everything. And a lot of times it'll be one person who writes all of the instrumentation and all of the lyrics as well, and then just has a different vocalist, or the vocalist writes everything and people just play it. So it was fun, like, having a product that was like, we all actually did this. Like, it was cool. This is like a complete amalgamation of like every single person in the band had their like stamp on it. We all have a footprint in the album somewhere, and it's up to everybody else to figure out what it is. But it's cool that we all like some of the songs we don't even really remember who wrote what part, because it was like, well, I mean, this part's cool. I don't remember what it sounded like before, and I don't remember if you wrote it or if I wrote it and then you did something with it, or like what's going on. So it's kind of neat that we kind of got lost in like the mix of like the writing session of just like, well, all I know is we ended up with an album. I don't remember who wrote what, but we're here now.
I mean, I guess that's the best way to go about it, not to know, that way you you can't decipher what is good or not good or bad, but you know which parts are whose, and so if they are bad parts in your head, you won't, you know, you don't need to,
right?
You don't know who is guilty of that, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Or vice versa. If it's really good, you can think that you may have wrote it, but you didn't, you know.
Right.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you kind of like brought to the table as far as what Enterprise Earth did prior, Travis? Like, because you said you're bringing some other things from other styles of metal that you listen to. Are they very noticeable on some of these tracks, or like, you know, what did you bring to it?
I mean, so for me, like my background with like playing music in general, like I started out as a guitar player, and I played guitar in like a metalcore band when I was like 13, and then did that, and I learned how to like sing and do some vocals. So then I would do that while playing guitar for my band, and then I just like slowly transitioned. We were together for like, I don't even know, like probably like 8 years or something like that before I ended up doing other things. But it was like I would slowly transition into doing like more vocals while also playing guitar. So I did a lot of metalcore back in the day, and then I like started a deathcore band with one of my best friends who I still play in bands with to this day. We've been playing music for like 10 years, and like started a deathcore band because I wanted to be a vocalist. But I also wrote all the guitar parts for that. It was just me and him who wrote everything, and then our friends would just like play guitar. And so coming from that background of like, I mean, I'm like 26, so my like introduction to deathcore was a lot later than most of the people that we tour with, or like other like bands that I have a lot of respect for were like around for such an early generation of that. And I had a little bit later of a generation of that. So the like writing style from me is pretty different because I include a lot of like the metalcore stuff, and then a lot of like, I don't want to say newer deathcore compared to now, but newer deathcore compared to like when Gabe heard deathcore for the first time. You know, it's like totally different like stages of the genre. So that, and then vocally, I feel like the only thing that I really like bring to it that's different is just that I try to like have a lot of variation in like my vocal range. So I don't really like stick to one thing 90% of the time. I like have my comfort zones, but I try to do like new stuff on the album and like include some of the things that people like to hear, but also including just most of the things that I like wanted to hear from myself versus us like trying to cater to a crowd by being like, oh, I'm going to do all these crazy things. And like, you're not going to be able to understand any of it, but here's me being crazy.
Yeah.
So it's fun just to do some like, you can understand what I'm saying vocals.
Interesting. Yeah, that's cool. Before, and not to divert from your vocal ability, Travis, but prior to Travis getting into the band, Gabe, because you do backup vocals and you yada yada, did you ever think about taking over the reins when Dan stepped out, or did you always want to just remain the guitar player and just do backup vocals and stuff like that?
I never had a desire to be like vocalist of this band, because I do not want to have to sing and play all these parts all at once.
Okay.
Difficult. Also, like I'm not a harsh vocalist. I don't have tones like he has or Dan has. I can sing, I can yell, but that's about it. I can't do everything that the vocalist of this band needs to do. In addition to not being, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's always good. Yeah, it's probably better to have Travis do it since he's got more of not career, but like experience at it. So that's always good.
He's a vocalist. I am not a vocalist. Like I can sing. I would sing in front of one of my old bands, but I'm not trying to do that here. So yeah.
Yeah, you have to get on YouTube and get some tutorials or something like that on how to do this, that, or the other.
I'm good on all that.
And plus, you added another backup vocalist too with Dakota, so you share the burden, so to speak, of the vocal ability.
Right. Yeah. We're spreading that out, which is super fun, and I'm happy to add my voice wherever it is appropriate. We like adding lots of textures to our music. So whatever feels right, we're happy to do it. So.
Does this feel more like does Death and Anthology feel more of a complete package of what Enterprise Earth is currently and what it will be going forward than it has been in the past?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like with every release that Enterprise has done since I've been in the band, we've grown and matured and evolved to the next step. And with every album, Lucifer's Chosen, now Death and Anthology, it's like oh, this is the next level up. This feels great. This is the next level up. This feels great. Now this is the next level up. This feels great. Which is, I hope I can always say that, because that means we're always growing and, getting better and, and still having fun and enjoying ourselves. And then this time in particular, like we mentioned earlier, just writing together was, that was so refreshing and, unlocked and opened new doors for us as well. So, yeah, this is definitely the best version of Enterprise, so far. And I hope, again, I hope I can say that with every album that we release.
Right. And because you guys, the frequency of your releases in the last couple of years has been, back to back almost. You had the one in 2002, and now you're getting another one next week. Is it? Do you think it's easier for you guys to just not like churn out material, but like create material? And do you think that your frequency is going to remain on this trajectory, or do you don't have a thing where like a set schedule of like we need to release every 2 years or 3 years or 4 years just comes naturally, or what do you think it's going to be going forward?
I mean, because we self-produce, that does enable us to write and create music more frequently, which is great. Like, I love doing that. I love having the ability to do that. And that's something that, I think we definitely want to do moving forward, is just always be able to create and produce stuff, whether it be an album or just singles or an EP. We can just, hey, like, we have time, let's do it, yeah, I think that's really cool. And it's cool to see, especially in this modern age where, someone can create a commercially viable product with a laptop in their bedroom, and, we have the ability to do that. And, yeah, I think that's something that's one of our strong suits, is we can just create music and just fucking do it. So,
yeah, a lot of us, like, I mean, I write music constantly when I'm home too, whether it's for this band or any variation of any project. I just like to write music. So and I know Coda's the same way. Like, as soon as we like get into like a writing mode, it's like we're just going to start pumping shit out, and whatever works for the band or whatever feels like it's right for Enterprise, we use and move forward and do that. So I think the like writing frequency and the release frequency after this will stay pretty consistent, just because we all do we all enjoy it a lot. So I don't want to I never want to put a time stamp on something that I feel doesn't deserve it. Like, it's, if you're a legacy band, you only have to put out a record every 4 years. And if you like Meshuggah, they can put out a record every 5-6 years and people are going to be equally as hyped for it. It's going to get the same amount of traction, but it's like, you can take your time to do stuff like that. But I feel like in the stage of life that we're all in the stage of our career too, being able to just put out music kind of whenever the fuck we want is really sick, because it just shows how easily bands can evolve as well, which is something that I look forward to a lot. Is just like wondering what, it's basically as soon as this album was done and we had Gabe finished the final mixes and mastering and everything, I was like, all right, what are we going to start writing the next one? Because I'm ready to build off of this. What are we going to do now that is better than what we just did?
Yeah. How much of a drag is that? Because obviously you do have to give, the fans and the audience some time to sit with this new record.
Yeah.
But, you're itching and wanting to go. So and another thing is I wanted to ask too, is you spent 9 days in the cabin cranking out the material. How much of that material made the final cut and how much didn't, and that you're still working on to maybe tweak and do something for the next stuff,
Yeah, honestly, I'd say probably a good 85% of what we wrote or brought to the cabin stayed. And then, but we also did write a lot of completely fresh material there. But I mean, for example, the song Casket of Rust, one of the main riffs in that song and the first variation of the acoustic intro, I wrote that when I was 15 years old, and it just never made it into a song that I fully recorded. There's plenty of demos of different versions of the riff, but we can sit on music as long as we want. And if it still holds up now with some tweaks and stuff, then it's I mean, I have songs that I've written, 5, 6, 7 years ago where I'm these are still kind of cool. If I just you grow as a songwriter, so you change a couple things and then move forward, or switch the tuning up, add a different, any sort of variation to the riff in general. And so I feel like we don't really get like itchy about it. But one of the perks is that we do tour a lot, so that keeps us from being able to like have dedicated time to write, record, release. So a lot of the like album cycle with giving it time to breathe and giving people time to like, if they don't like it on first listen, but they heard it 6 months later and they're like, oh, you know what, this album fucks. I like should have given it a chance a while ago. Giving that kind of space is really easy to do when you tour as much as we do. We've been pretty nonstop since I started touring with the band like 2 years. 2 years ago.
2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, you joined live in like what 21 because you took over for Dan before Dan left, really. So you were like the guy on stage for I guess a good chunk of 21 and 22.
Yeah, it was from September of 2021 all the way up until now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a minute because I think I like officially joined like publicly in the summer of 2022. I've been doing it for like almost a year at that point, you know.
Yeah. With the ability and the ease you guys can create material, do you think you'll always do these albums, or do you think that you'll ever just do singles? You know, because in the day and age of like TikTok and short attention spans and content ingesting, and just staying relevant with your audience and fan base too, like, do you ever think about releasing, like, say an album's 12 songs, you can release a new song every month of the year and stay relevant? Do you ever think about doing that or play with that idea?
Yeah, I mean, you do see a lot of artists doing that these days. More people in metal starting to do it more too. You know, obviously it's been very common in pop and hip hop for a long time. But yeah, I mean, I think we can do both, and I think we would continue to do both because the nice thing, or an interesting thing about, I think, metal in particular, or any genre of music, or any artist that like puts like a lot of energy and intention and integrity in their music, is like, I feel like an album, a whole body of work, is still greatly appreciated by the fan base, and in metal in particular, people still appreciate an album. That being said, releasing singles and EPs, you know, smaller chunks of music, is also completely viable and also great too. Something that we've talked about recently is, you know, like with our sound, we pull from a lot of influences. Sometimes it's all over the place, for better, for worse. But we've talked about, okay, what if we did like an EP, like a 3 to 5 song EP, but it's all got the same vibe, you know, like, and put something like a smaller cohesive offering out, if you will. Mm-hmm. But we could also just, you know, crank out a single every month. You know, we could also, and then we can, if we have 6 months, then that's the time to write an album, maybe, you know, and do a full body of work that, you know, people will, I guess, to loop back to the beginning, I'm grateful that people still appreciate full bodies of work.
Right.
Because from an artistic standpoint, you know, a single does capture where you are at that point in time, but a whole album, I feel like, captures it's a more intense period of time. Do my best to describe this as best as I can, but like it captures a larger, more intense, more authentic, honest spectrum of that artist, that collective as a whole, in that period of time. And I love seeing that from artists. I love doing that and providing that as an artist. And I'm thankful that metal is still a genre that appreciates a full body of work too.
Yeah, I think like LPs as a whole are like, I consider them much more like historical pieces of music. Yeah. You know, it's like, this was a full album that came out during this time that like changed something. And it's always been like, I feel like whenever there's been a big shift in any genre, it's been when a full record has come out and not really from a single. Nowadays, it's a little bit different just because like a band can put out one song and change everything. You know, like Lorna put out To the Hellfire, and it like changed literally everything. There was an EP attached to it, but the single itself changed everything. Whereas before, it was a lot more of just like, you know, Metallica put out the Black Album, and it was like, oh, well, everything's different now. Yeah, you know, so like I do have a lot of like respect for full length records, but I do think that, you know, like Gabe said, like I love that people still appreciate them in metal in particular, but I think that the realm is moving further and further away from that because of the attention span, and nobody wants to listen to an hour of the same band anymore. Like even live, people have a hard time staying for an hour-long set of a band. Are you going to go home and listen to a full like 60-minute record from that band? Most likely not. There's going to be like 3 songs on there that they skip every time. And as an artist, I personally would rather put out a more condensed body of work where people are going to enjoy every single second of it than have any sort of filler in there, which can still make itself into a full-length record if you're like, wow, now I have like 12 songs that I don't think there's any filler in here at all. There's no like song that was almost on the chopping block. But I think the times have changed a lot. So the ability to put out singles and have them be received, or put out EPs and have them be received, it's paid off well for Spiritbox. I mean, that's exactly what they've been doing. Other than Eternal Blue, it was just a shitload of singles, and then the album, and then the new EP after that, which is great. But yeah, it's interesting how it's all like shifted now.
Yeah, that's why Spiritbox is a great example, because again, they were one that did that for the pandemic obviously probably helped, not helped, but allowed a lot of people to do a lot of things, write a lot of things, and put out a lot of things. So I didn't want to say it helped, because obviously it sucked.
Right.
But, it helped with like art and stuff like that going forward. If you were trying to do singles and stuff like that and EPs on your own, like how does that incorporate with the label you're currently with? Like, do they have a say in what's released when you release it, or do you just come to them and be like, we have this done, or we have these tracks done, or this EP, this single? Like, could you do whatever you want on your own, or do you have to go through, Monarch and stuff like that?
So, I mean, being signed to a label, pros and cons, of course.
Yeah.
As everyone, and I'll start off by, like, Monarch has always been great to us. Like, as far as labels goes, they've never been very restrictive. They've always been very encouraging of us, and they're very nice people there too. Nice, hardworking people there. And I have lots of good things to say about them. But at the same time, like, labels are restrictive in the sense it's, when you sign to a label, you are signing up, let's be real, signing up for a very shitty loan. Yeah. Which they're aware of that.
Everybody knows that.
Like, the labels are aware of that too. I've had conversations with label people about this. There's no hiding anything these days, which is nice. It's more transparent than how it used to be. But coming with that, a label is loaning you X amount of dollars to create this album, record art, videos, all that stuff. And if I was loaning someone a shit ton of money, I want to have a say in where that money was being used and how it was being allocated. Of course, it's because I'm investing in this product, if you will.
Right.
So with that being said, they can dictate, okay, like, hey, like only an album goes towards our contract. Singles don't go towards our contract. It's not like we could just release 12 singles and that counts as an album. It has to be an album, because that's the way they operate. So in a sense, that is restrictive towards us, because it's like, oh, we can't just do this and this and that because they own the rights to our music, so we have to go through them to release it. Okay. So yeah, I guess that is a caveat of being signed to a label. The perk is, they give you money to do cool things if you don't have your own money. But if you have your own money, if you can build your band and your business to the point to where you can keep the ball rolling comfortably, then you can do things yourselves these days. And that's what, like, labels are also aware that people can be completely independent and be completely successful these days as well. Nothing against labels at all. Like I said, we haven't been able to do the things we do without Monarch. Like,
they've there for a reason.
Yeah, they've been pivotal towards our growth. But also, like, being an independent artist also allows you to just literally do whatever you want. You completely steer the ship the way you want to do it, and you reap all the benefits, but you also suffer all the consequences as well, financially, business-wise, all that stuff. So that's the risk you take. But it is also really cool seeing a lot of bands, a lot of our peers that we've toured with too, who are independent bands, grow to the point where, like, it's like, wow, like, they're doing great. Their bills are paid every month off their streaming royalties. They are generating passive income with their streaming, because you just keep putting out songs and it just keeps growing and building and stuff like that. And it's really cool to see and have the ability to do that these days, where as in the past, the labels and the managers were the gatekeepers to the industry. And now, thanks to the internet and just times have changed, people have evolved, the industry's evolved. Those walls are completely broken down. And if you make the right moves and work hard enough and stick to it long enough, you can do it all yourself.
True. Very true. Speaking of, we were talking about the cohesiveness of a record and the differences between like some things you might try on an EP or an LP. What are some directions that, because you guys are an extreme metal / deathcore band, what are some directions that you would like to tap into or go, not fully, obviously, just to explore, like maybe on a single or an EP? What are some other, I don't want to say genres, but other directions that you guys would like to dabble in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking a lot recently about, I mean, honestly, even since before we started writing Death and Anthology, we had been talking about what we wanted the band's like sonic evolution to be like. But after the album, especially, we've been just like going over stuff like, we've been wanting to schedule another writing session and get all in the same room together without there being a tour happening, and, just sit down and like pay attention to the music. And I'm like super into like video game and movie soundtracks and like the like kind of like sound design that's involved with stuff like that. And we also all have like a bit of a fascination with like world music and just very like eclectic types of like instrumental music. So bringing some like interesting stuff like that over to what we do, and then incorporating like just like really heavy dark metal with all this other like almost very like odd sounding shit in the background is something that I really want to fuck with, and like just see what, even if nothing comes out of it, but we can see what we're able to create with that. It would just be super fun and like liberating as a songwriter to be like, all right, we're gonna like try something completely different for us that like doesn't alienate fan bases by being like, oh, they're not a deathcore band anymore, they're not a metal band in general anymore. Like sticking within the umbrella of our realm, but trying to do something that like nobody else really does too often.
Yeah. And how I'm sorry, go ahead, finish, Gabe, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like doing what Travis just said, exploring new territories that we've been talking and thinking about a lot. And then that, I feel like, coupled with, and I guess this is how one goes about building upon what you've already done without completely alienating, your fan base, or completely departing from what you've done in the past, is taking that and then building upon what you've already done too, like refining what we're already doing to do it better. And then and that, I feel like that by refining it also allows to integrate the new features as well.
Yeah.
To gain a broader perspective of, what we need to sound like, where we need to go. But still have it be organic, like incorporating these new elements while keeping it organic and, organic, familiar, and fresh, I guess.
Yeah. I see it more as like setting a challenge on yourself as a songwriter too, where it's like, you're still like if I sit down to play, like if I want to write, like I have like another deathcore band and I write all like 90% of the guitars for that. And when I sit down to like write riffs for that band, I know pretty much exactly what it's going to sound like when I sit down to do it. Cause I have a very like particular writing style when it comes to that. I have a very particular writing style when it comes to all subgenres of music that I write. But sitting down, knowing that it's going to be this, right? Like I can like paint a picture, at least the outline of what I know it's going to end up like, but then challenging myself to fill in the details with something completely different than what I would normally do if I just sat down and like brainlessly wrote a song, which it's still going to come out as my playing, my tastes, my experiences, but being really intentional about setting a challenge on yourself as a songwriter is something that I like really would love for us to do. And I mean, we even did it on the last album too. We would sit down and be like, all right, this is cool, but what can we do to like challenge ourselves to make this different? Like, what would we normally do here? Let's try something else instead.
Yeah. Where can deathcore go, and where's the direction going for deathcore? Right, because it seems like because you guys are talking about adding new things and new elements and such, and like it doesn't happen that often to where, like you said earlier, you have a band like Lorna Shore come in and they shook up the whole game with the Hellfire. So like, you know, because some people, to the layman who doesn't listen to deathcore and whatnot, it all sounds the same, right? So
right.
What is the trajectory in your eyes where deathcore is going and can go?
It's kind of a loaded question.
It is, yeah.
I feel like, I mean, so metal in general, I feel like has always been the all-encompassing genre. Like you can take anything and make it metal. You can take fucking like country and turn it metal. You can take pop and make it metal. You can take EDM and make it metal.
Yeah.
You know,
and people are.
Classical music, you know, anything really, like jazz, you know, blues, whatever, you know, it can all go into this metal, takes it all in, you know. And I feel in particular, like deathcore is evolving in this way to where it's becoming an all-encompassing genre as well. You know, like I feel like there's a lot of bands in our genre that are just, you know, deathcore started in mid-2000s. If you want to get into deathcore lore, like, you know, mid-2000s with, you know, like All Shall Perish, the Jawfra Cowboys, stuff like that, where it was, I guess not one-dimensional, but it was pretty straightforward, you know, like, and then it just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew, and started taking on more things and evolving and transforming. And now, you know, there's bands like Lorna Shore that, you know, it's like fucking Nightwish and Sonata Arctica mixed with like deathcore, right. And it's fucking badass, you know. And then like we're all over the place, and then there's other bands that are doing really cool, interesting shit as well.
Yeah, I mean, like Humanity's Last Breath has taken like a completely different take on deathcore as well, and like I see a lot of like the expansion of deathcore. I think is just going to be the things that I'm like kind of an ass about this. I don't think there's anything new at all in music whatsoever. There's only so many notes you can only play so many fucking times, you know. But I think that where deathcore can go, I'm not sure where it's going to go, but where I think it can go is that the things that aren't, I feel like this is always how it works too, is that the things that aren't as popular right now are going to rise to the top again at some point. And like, I mean, right now we're seeing like this massive uptick in like bands trying to sound like OG deathcore, you know, like you know, there's like so many bands that sound like the first Suicide Silence record, and there's like 5 bands right now that are blowing up that all sound like the first Suicide Silence record. So like, it's, you know, we're seeing these like waves of shit coming back and then falling down again, and then like at some point Aversion's Crown's Tyrant album is what everybody's going to be writing, and that's what's going to be popular again in 12 years, and then it's going to fall back down again, and there's going to be something else. Like, I think deathcore is just going to go in this same like Ouroboros-like cycle where it eats itself out of the ass and then it spits itself back out and does something else. We all like the same shit, so it can only go so far.
It's interesting because I feel like things work in cycles, like you just like an Ouroboros of things, and there's never like a set amount of years or time, but I feel like it's like every 20 to 30 years things cycle. Yeah. And now we're seeing for about 20 years since deathcore came about, it's having its from the golden era of deathcore in the mid 2000s. Now it's fucking bigger than it ever was. You saw that with metalcore, you know, kind of surging. Oh yeah. Too. You saw that with even kind of like new metal in a way too. There's like it is coming back. A lot of that sound like Limp Bizkit and Deftones, you know, like when that was popping off in the early 2000s. 20 years. It's every 20 years.
Once something becomes vintage, it's popular again. Yes. And so we're waiting for the next like vintage era to become popular.
Yeah. I asked that because, you know, deathcore did get a big run there in the mid 2000s, early 2010s, but also had a sharp fall off it, I felt like for a while there. And you know, I don't know what the cause for that was. Maybe because, like, I don't know, the gimmick of it just ran dry, I guess, and people were wanting more or something. But it's been wild to see it just in the last handful of years come raging back. Obviously, you have bands like Lorna Shore and other like yada yada helping that. But you know, it's crazy. I've never seen something in that short of a span of time like fall off and come back musically in a genre wise. You know.
I mean, even at that too, like we're seeing a massive rise in things just like gaining like crazy popularity in general. I mean, like Sleep Token just outstreams Metallica, and nobody knew about that band 3 fucking years ago, and now they stream better than Metallica does. Like we're seeing these crazy rises in people like latching on to like heavy music in general. I know they're not always heavy. I like love every album from that band, but people are latching on to just this like really visceral type of music because I feel like, I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to like describe fully, but I feel like with just where everybody's at in their life and where the world is at the moment and where it's been, but people are seeing it more often now. I like it. You kind of need something that is equally as visceral as some of the actual shit that like happens in our lives to like cope. You know, at your core, it's music is really just like coping for most people.
Sure.
So I feel like that's been kind of a big deal about it too, is that people are like, oh, this like makes me feel better about how fucking awful everything is. So like, I'm gonna listen to this band that's like the most extreme thing I've ever heard in my life, and that's what happens.
And
so those breakdowns.
Yeah, add to that, visceral is the perfect word to describe it, and like the energy of metal is unmatched. I feel like, you know, like
unique.
Like you go to a metal show, the only thing that gets remotely close is like EDM, you know, like that's the only thing that gets close, you know. But like the energy of a metal show is unmatched, and I feel like that energy is like extremely addictive, you know, and it's because it's so visceral, because it's so raw, because
it's that dopamine dump,
it's just like that feeling of this I'll save it again, visceral energy. And, you know, that I feel like that's what hooks a lot of people, even if you take like a normie, as we would call them, to a and you take a normie to a metal show, and even if they're not super into it, I feel like a lot of them are like, wow, that was like really fucking cool. Like, I can't understand what he's saying, but like, this is like really fucking cool. Like, I get it now. I understand. And I feel like you're starting to see more and more of that, and you see bands like Sleep Token and Spirit Box that are much more approachable than, you know, extreme death metal bands. And that's getting more people, more normies, into this genre of music, which is fucking so cool, because we're in this very niche genre of music, you know. But it's such a powerful and it's such an honest genre of music too, that I feel like people are people really resonate and appreciate it once you get into it. Awesome to see it grow and explode, and seeing bands explode, even if they're super young bands, you know, like bands that have only been bands for 3 years explode, and it's like, well, that's fucking cool, because now anyone can fucking do it, you know?
Absolutely.
Well, anyone can do it. That's the thing. I think anyone can do it. You know, you write stuff in your van studio and put it out. So, you know what I mean? You can do it anywhere and put it out anywhere. It doesn't matter. But, you know, and speaking of those bands, like those huge bands like Sleep Token and Spirit Box, like, even though they might not be for everybody, you know, in the heavy world or non-heavy world, there's a place, like I try to tell people, I used to like not like certain bands, and, you know, for whatever reason, but as I grew older, I was like, you know, there's a place for everything. And those bands have a place where, like you said, they're getting more people into our little world. So,
absolutely,
you know, it might not be for me or this person or that person, or you know, that group over there may love it, and they may not know about you guys or any of the bands that we love. So hopefully those people are like, you know, falling down the Plinko board and finding a band at the end of it that's not somewhat as palatable as, you know, those bands are. But
I just went on like a rant about this not that long ago with some friends of mine, just about how, like, you know, there's all these like gateway bands now, which is great, and I feel like most of the like shit that they get is just like, everybody's like, oh, you know, I just don't like what they do. And it's like, okay, well, like it doesn't separate the fact that it's still art, and like not all art is made for you. Not all art is made for me. And like, but if that art that wasn't made for you connects a different person to your art, then like, why are we shitting on it?
Yeah.
You know, like, good for them is good for us. Like the amount of people who got into like, even just like even the amount of kids that got into hardcore after seeing bands like Gulch pop off on TikTok from like live videos and shit. You know, it was like these kids go out to these local shows, and then now I'm from California, like Northern California, And right now, the underground, like local scene in pretty much all of NorCal and like Bay Area included, is massive. It is huge, dude. We've seen like nothing like it for decades.
Yeah, I agree.
And like
my partner lives in San Francisco, so
yeah, like when I started going to shows when I was like 12, I had never seen anything like what the shows are right now, and like just there's this massive rise in all this shit, but it's leading them to all kinds of other bands too, because they're like, we're seeing a lot of like mixed bill stuff going on now too, which like wasn't. I know it had its time for a while. There was like a lot of like hardcore and pop punk bands would tour together, like Story So Far and Terror would do tours together all the time. But I feel like we're seeing a lot more crossover now too, where like even just the members of those bands have another band that isn't like that, and we're just connecting people all over the place. And then when we got the whole like Spotify like related artists thing too, that's also been a massive connector for people. But yeah, it's just been really sick like watching all of this happen. And I've tried to like gain more of an appreciation for other people's art, even if it's not something that I'm into, just because it absolutely has the possibility to lead people to other kinds of art. And just because it's not made for me doesn't mean that it's bad. Yeah. But
it took me a long time to get that mindset. I'll just be honest with you. It took me a long time. Yeah. But I mean, absolutely. You're right, because, and again, like you mentioned it as art, it's doing what it's, even if I don't like it, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Here I am talking about it with other people, lamenting. Right. I might be lamenting about it or downing it, but I'm still talking about it, and someone else is learning about that band. They may go check that band out and have a completely different idea, and they'll be like, "Oh, I love this band," and I'm like, "Oh, But again, I only hope that they fall down the cracks. That's my thing. I just, wherever you're at, just fall down the cracks, and it's not that hard to find more of what you like, especially nowadays, with the internet and like you said, Spotify, similar artists and all this stuff, and the algorithms and blah blah blah, Smart Shuffle. I mean, those are great tools to find new bands, or I mean, like, I don't know how many people still visit websites like Lambgoat and stuff for new music, but there are outlets out there that do that too. So I only hope that they fall down, the cracks. That's all.
Absolutely. And even just people finding like when I would get into a band when I was younger, I would like look up what other bands those members were in before they were in that band, just in case it was like similar and I liked the other stuff too. Or like trying to ask my other friends like who were older than me and had been listening to these bands. I'm like, dude, where did these guys get this from? Like, who sounded like this before them, or did they start this? And like finding new music like that, which I feel like has also helped a lot with this resurgence and like older bands making a comeback. Right. Like I know Job for a Cowboy's been like coming back for a while, but even with them like being able to, dude, I was like side stage at Blue Ridge watching them play, and the crowd was fucking massive, and it was insane. Just like for a band that hadn't played a show in what, like 10 years or something like that.
Something like that.
Like coming back and being like, yeah, we're gonna play this festival, and it's gonna be like we never stopped. Like, but I feel like a lot of that is like partially owed to people finding these newer bands and then having even just like discussions with people on like Reddit. I'm in the like Deathcore subreddit a lot, and just like watching people, send all these recommendations, and like Job for a Cowboy's always in there. Someone's like, oh, I really like this band. What can I find that sounds like that? And whereas like, go listen to these older bands, like appreciate the music more, appreciate where it came from, appreciate like the elders who kind of like built all this shit that we do now that we're like, low key bastardizing to an extent, So it's cool. I feel like it's helped a lot with like kind of breathing some life back into the bands that like we owe a lot of our shit to.
Yeah. When I was younger, I definitely didn't listen to the older bands, and like when I first got into metalcore, it was like early 2000s, right? So like you have all those bands like Poison the Well and Every Time I Die and the Trustkill Ferret cycle of bands, right? That was like my metalcore. But then like it wasn't until recently, in the last like 5-7 years, I started listening to like real early metalcore in the 90s. I'm like, oh, this is fucking where all that, and like I can hear it. It's like all the bands I love sound exactly like Dead Guy or some other fucking band. So I'm like, oh, I get it now. And so now I listen to those early bands more than I do the newer bands. But I don't know. I could be older too, so that might be why.
Also, not to cut anything short because we're having a great conversation, but we are dealing with like bass thing right now.
Yeah,
I have to
call the airline.
I have to call the airline soon before.
No, you're all good. You're all good. I was going to cut it off anyway. We've already gone an hour, so you know what I mean.
Okay.
It goes by quick, man.
Yeah.
No, it's been awesome.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I thought you guys. I was going to cut you off because you were probably like 7-8 hours ahead of me or whatever. So you probably jet lagged and wanting to go to bed in general. So I was going to cut it anyway, Gabe. But
good. If we didn't have fucking baseball shit, I'd talk to you as long as you want. But
no, I mean that's very important. You got to get that situated for the next 31 days. So by all means, you're allowed to cut it off.
We have one day to figure this out. So
But it was great talking to both of you, Travis and Gabe. Good luck on the rest of your tour, and I know you guys got another tour lined up when you get home, so there's no stopping whatsoever. And if you're listening to this still at the end of this podcast in 2 days, I guess, on February 2nd, Death and Anthology comes out on Monarch, so go ahead and pick that up, stream it, do whatever. And like I said, they'll be on tour. Who you go on tour with when you come back?
we are headlining.
Yeah. Who you bringing out? Oh, Inferi, Crown Magnetar, and Tracheotomy.
Yes.
Yes.
So the Death and Anthology North American tour. Cannot wait to play all these new songs in our home in Canada.
Get a ticket. All right. Thanks for hanging with me today. And like I said, good luck on your tour and the new album.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much for having us.
Appreciate your time. Yeah, it's been great.
Have a good one, guys.